Single day. And today we've got a very special one once again, as we discuss with a fantastic guest at the club that we love. And today we're tackling some of the big questions surrounding the club. So without further ado, let's kick things off. Very happy to be joined by Andrew, aka Arseblog. How you doing, mate? You good, Joel?
I'm good, Tom. How are you?
Very good, mate. Very good.
Happy Valentines to you.
Indeed, yes. I was going to kick the show off with two, what's the word I put in it? Casual questions, if you like. I'll do them in chronological order.
Okay.
But first, are we a celebrator of Pancake Day? And if so, what is your chosen pancake?
Yeah, we did some pancakes yesterday, and I was looking for, the little Biscoff biscuits that you get with coffee, right? They make a spread, which is unbelievable. It's just, I couldn't find it though, so I had to get some kind of like salted caramel type thing, and made the pancakes with a bit of a salted caramel in the middle. They were delicious. Yeah. So I'm on board with pancakes.
Do you like the savoury one? I got told I'm missing out on not having savoury pancakes, like ham and cheese pancakes and stuff.
Never been particularly a fan of those, I have to say. But then I've always just associated pancakes with being sweet, you know?
Yeah. A friend of my other half said they made a lasagna pancake, which is like you replace the pasta sheets with pancakes, which seems disgusting on paper.
That seems like something somebody would do on TikTok.
Yeah.
And then our Arsenal friend Chef Reactions would have a look at it and go, "Oh God, what are you doing?" Yeah.
And of course, the second question being, as you've alluded to it, being Valentine's Day, do we see it as a commercial opportunity or is it something to celebrate?
Well, by my brand or my range of Valentine's merchandise, I should have announced it before today. Big hearts, Cupids, all of that. No, it is of course a load of nonsense. I think if you need to have a particular day to validate the relationship and the care that you have for your other half, then maybe something is going wrong there. Every day should be Valentine's Day, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to dial this back tonight. I think.
I put you in trouble here. I'm sorry.
All good. I suppose a nice question to start things off the show, and chat box welcome. We're going to be tackling some of your big questions about the club as well throughout tonight's episode. So throw them in, and I'll save them for later. What do you love most about Arsenal right now?
What do I love? The possibility, the potential, the excitement that comes with being good again and hoping that we can win the Premier League after so long. I think that's kind of what I love most, is that we've spoken quite a lot down the years, and we've had some discussions that have been difficult, right, about where we are, where we're going, what we're doing, how are we going to get there, how are we ever going to bridge the gap to Liverpool and Manchester City. Here we are in much quicker time than I thought. And I think that is the thing that I love the most, is the possibility that, in May, we could be Premier League champions. I'm not saying we will be, but we're in the mix. We're in the conversation. I don't think it's a case anymore that Pep Guardiola and Jurgen Klopp are sort of looking over their shoulders and going, we're not really worried about Arsenal. We're not really worried about anyone else. They're worried about us because we're good. And I think that for me is what keeps you going, is that hope, is just the potential that we could be, really celebrating something much more than Valentine's Day. We could be celebrating something substantial and meaningful together as an Arsenal community at the end of the season. I'll throw it back at you. What do you love about Arsenal right now?
I love the togetherness of the team. Actually, I just love I love what Arteta's done with the group, and it's given it such an identity. I think yours is a great answer about the potential, because for so many years we were kind of in this purgatorial state as a club of thinking that top four was the maximum, and not falling out of Europe entirely was the disaster. And now we're a club that sees not winning a title as the disaster, and winning it as the potential, and that's a glorious place to be. But I think that's come from the togetherness, the principles that Arteta has instilled in this side, and it makes them a likable group. It makes them very commercial, and on the day of days that we sit today, I think that's a good word to use, because I think, you know, it's generated such a buzz. And I mean, I'd rarely allow a new release of Arsenal's merchandise to go too unpurchased these days,
Yeah.
mainly because they bring out such good stuff, rather frustratingly, other than season's away kit, which is certainly something I still don't love. Has that grown on you throughout the season, the away kit?
Yeah, because we keep winning games in it, so
Yeah.
it's one of those where, you know, we did a thing in LA during the summer, and I stood
Mm.
beside Gilberto Silva wearing that kit, and it's like, this looks great on him, you know, but he's got that build. Maybe it's not as flattering for your average day-to-day fan, but look, you know, I think the bruised banana kit, for example, is one that went down in folklore, and people loved it so much, not because they saw the design straight away and went, "Ooh, look at that." It's because it's associated with success and associated with teams that people loved and players that people loved. And maybe, you know, despite the fact it looks like it was sort of put together with some leftover Dayglow markers, you know, a Dino Rod van on the outside and all the rest. It might be that if we win the title, you know, they keep trying to sell that. Our away kit is on discount right now. I
Yeah.
guarantee you, if we win the title, all of those shirts will get sold. So,
Oh.
you know, I don't hate it as much as some of the kits we've had down the years. I'm thinking of that kind of turquoise one that we wore. Oh,
Mm.
no, the kind of yeah, was it kind of turquoise, all turquoise? I
Yeah, it
remember
was like a dark green trim with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Granit Xhaka scored a goal at Crystal Palace wearing
Yes.
that kit, and
Yes.
then maybe gave away 2 penalties in the same game.
Yeah, I
Um,
think you did, yeah.
that one I really don't like, but this one, you know, as long as we keep winning games, I can live with it for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think that game actually was Xhaka giving away a penalty for Zaha, and Mustafi gave away another one that
Oh, of
day.
course, yeah.
Yeah, it's the most Arsenal thing of the mid-2010s that you could think of, yeah.
Mhm.
But no, it's a scary thought, actually, the idea of winning a league title. And, you know, you think of the articles that go back for the years of the title-winning kits Arsenal have had, and that being the most recent one. It's a scary thought, but one I
Well,
will embrace.
oh, for sure, like, if that's the
Yeah.
worst that they can come up with, like, look at how bad Arsenal's kit was when they won the league. Oh, well, you know, we'll all just have to live with that one, I think.
And I suppose it does bleed quite nicely into the question regarding titles of, I think something of a misconception which has grown throughout the season is this argument that we're worse than last year. Is claims that are made that we're worse, and we're 5 points worse off than we were this same point last season, but we're a goal better off and a goal conceded better off than we were at the same stage, despite having that points deficit. So, do you think it's true that we're worse compared to what we were last season?
I mean, if you just want to look at the numbers and say, well, we're 5 points worse off than we were at this stage last season, you can make that argument. I don't think that really holds
Mm,
any water, though. You know, it's different. You're not playing the same teams in the same sequence for a start, so
yeah.
it's different. Um, Last season, I've said this before, is there's an element of like chasing the dragon to it, right? That, you know, I'm not speaking from experience here, but you know, we've all watched Train Spotting. You know, take your first hit of heroin, and then you're always chasing the dragon, right? And last season, after being bad for so long, it felt really, really good. And I think people were expecting kind of the same but better this time around, because we brought in £100 million Declan Rice and 65 million Kai Havertz and 40 million Jurriën Timber. It was like, okay, well, it's going to be the exact same, just a bit better. And I don't think it works like that. Football does not work like that. It's different. It's lightning in a bottle last season. It was so good and it was so much fun, and it didn't end the way we wanted. But maybe part of the reason it didn't end the way it wanted was because we weren't set up for it. We weren't set up to go the distance. We were
Mm,
like the pace setters last season. This time around, we've got to go the distance. So in order to do that, you have to be different. Maybe you have to approach games differently. Maybe you have to think about, you know, how do you build your team physically in August, September, and have them peak in March, April, May, like Manchester City do with their special vegetables and all the rest, right? You know, that there are just so many things that are going to be different about each season. And let's not forget this, right? Arsenal's start to last season was the best ever in the club's entire history. Ever. Like, it was always going to be a bit worse. It was always going to be a few points less. The key thing to look at, I think, is where we are in the table compared to our rivals, and we're there with them. And to me, that's far more important than looking back at last season and trying to draw parallels and through lines between two completely different things. Every horse race is different. Every 800 meters race is different. You know, every Tour de France is different. You know, it's just what we have to accept as football fans, I think.
Yeah, it's also the obsession to always have to compare as well that brings up these questions, isn't it? You can never just enjoy what's going on. It's always got to be compared to something else. What's gone before to know whether or not you're improving, I guess, is the reason as to why. And the problem is when you get to the top and you're in and around the top, the opportunities for progression, or rather signs of obvious progression, become that much harder to see because a position in the table when you're second, the only way to go forward again is to go into first. And when you're also battling not just with one team for the title, but two, there's that reality where you could end up finishing third, and yet you may not have even had too much of a worse season compared to when you finished second the season prior. And, you know, Liverpool, for instance, have had 90-plus point seasons so many times now and not won the league because the team they're up against have been that's slightly bit more perfect than they have. And, you know, Arsenal didn't finish with 90-plus points last season. And Manchester City, I don't think Man City did either, did they? And I think they still won the title. I'm trying to think of what their points tally was off the top.
I remember. I'll look it up while you're talking.
Yeah. And I think that where you go or where you make the improvements then is that you look back at the instances of where you dropped those points or what the key things was. And for me, if you're going to win the league, you've got to beat your rivals that you're challenging. And we didn't do that last season with City. We lost them home and we lost them away. We lost them in the FA Cup, of course, as well. And this season, Liverpool being one of the main rivals as well, we've beaten them. We didn't lose at their place. And we've beaten Manchester City this season as well in the league. And we have to go to the Etihad, which looks that's kind of the next peak on the horizon of fixtures that we've got. These run of games are leading up to that match at the Etihad at the end of next month. And that I see that as if Arsenal can come away with that. And I guess that leads quite nicely, I suppose, into the next question, which comes from that is that do Arsenal have to win that game? Probably to win the title.
I mean, anything is possible, right? Do they have to? I mean, probably.
Yeah.
Probably. To have a realistic chance of winning the title, I think we do have to beat Manchester City. Like, it could happen with a draw. You know, it's not impossible that it could happen if we draw there, but I think to sort of stake our title credentials properly, I think we do have to go there and win. We're overdue, of course. They don't drop a lot of points in the second half of the season. So even if you did draw with them, you're counting on them to drop points to somebody else, and chances are that's not going to happen. I think as well, you might need to strike something of a psychological blow to Manchester City and maybe to some of the other teams as well, that they'll go, oof. City will go, oh, we were beaten at home. That hasn't happened. And the other teams will go, my goodness, Arsenal have beaten Manchester City. You know, we really have to, not that we don't take them seriously, but, you know, that's a bit scary. You know, you start to build an aura, which I think City have, you know, because they've won it so many times. They have this aura of kind of inevitability, which we don't have. You know, we don't have that yet. We have, you know, there's a perception that we're still a bit flawed, which I think we are, you know, and until such time as we win a title or two titles or whatever it might be, people are always going to say, you know, there's something missing at Arsenal. They're not what they should be. They're, if you know, bottlers or whatever, which I think is absurd, really, because, you know, at the end of the day, you are competing against the best team in Europe. You're competing against Manchester City with 115 asterisks. That is the reality. And that is, it does get a little bit frustrating sometimes when, I know we can be better. We all want Arsenal to improve, but we also have to be realistic and look at what we're doing in the context of who we're competing against as well. But I would say I'd be very surprised if Arsenal won the title without winning at the Etihad. You?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, mathematically, no, but realistically, yes, I think so. And I think, it kind of blends back to that previous question of how we compare to last season. I feel much more confident going there this season compared to last season. As I just think we're much more resilient as a team. I think defensively we're better. I'm trying to think back the available team we had. Let me just do a quick Google. Was it do you remember the score? Was it 4-1 on the day?
Yeah, it was a 3-1 or 4-1, was it? I can't remember exactly.
4-1 it was on the day. And the team we had that day was Ramsdale, White, Holding, Gabriel, Zinchenko, Ødegaard, Xhaka, Partey, Saka, Jesus, Martinelli. I mean, immediately Rob Holdings stands out in that team, doesn't he? The difference that William Saliba will hopefully make. David Raya instead of Aaron Ramsdale, how much of a difference that might make. Declan Rice in there probably over Thomas Partey, although depending upon when he returns to action.
I don't think he was fit that day anyway, Partey. I think he was, played out the last part of the season at about 60%. Was that the game where he just got absolutely burned in midfield? I can't remember if it was Haaland or if it was De Bruyne, just sort of, brushed him off like he was some kind of kid, and yeah, there was something not right with Partey in the last part of last season.
And yeah, it was 1-1 at halftime. 1-0 at halftime. De Bruyne with that goal. Sorry, no, it was 2-0. John Stones scored just in extra time, added time of that first half.
That's right. Yeah.
And then De Bruyne put pay in the second with a second, and then Holding got that ironic consolation in the 86th minute. Scored with his hair down, which became, I think, BT Sports basic wallpaper for the rest of the season when that happened. But yeah, I do feel like this team is more resilient now, and I do feel like going to the Etihad, I think City will be more apprehensive about this Arsenal team than the Arsenal team that was coming to them last season in some ways too. There does seem to be something of a block there for us, though. I think about the FA Cup game last season where we went there, made a few changes, and I know we only lost 1-0, but it never looked like we were ever in control of that game. City controlled it so well, and it was rather surgical how they beat us on that day. But there is a difference, I think, about going there this time around. But yeah, just kind of your thoughts on City and Liverpool, I guess, as well as our rivals. Liverpool, of course, since we've beaten them, they've now lost Trent Alexander-Arnold. The reports are today that they rushed him back, basically, it seems, for that game against us, and they've now lost him for at least the League Cup final as well, which is a big blow for them. And, of course, for some upcoming games, they've got Brentford away next, Man City host Chelsea. How do you see those two now stacking up?
Clearly they have very good squads. I think what they have over us is a sort of experience, having gone the distance. I know Liverpool did it in a weird way during the COVID season, which I don't mean to take anything away from them, but it was a weird. It was a weird time for everyone. I think football was just as weird. They both have something that Arsenal don't have yet, which is the contributions from world-class players, world-class talent. And I think we've got some fantastic players. I think we've got players who can develop into potentially world-class players. But what Liverpool and City have are players who've been there, done that, won the trophies. They've won the Premier League. They've won the Champions League. And that's where I think they have a bit of an advantage over us, because those big players can be the ones who make the difference. Think back to the last time Arsenal won the title. 2-1 down to Liverpool at halftime on Good Friday. Thierry Henry, exhausted, even though he was absolutely knackered, just had the quality to take that game by the scruff of the neck. Arsenal end up winning 4-2, and from there, go on and win the title and go the season unbeaten, of course. And you have players at Liverpool who can do that well. Certainly one player in Mo Salah who can do that, and City probably have De Bruyne, Haaland, and rather annoyingly Bernardo Silva, who I think is pretty much in the same
he is.
ballpark as those guys. Like, he's just so annoyingly good. He's just this little guy who looks like he should be working in a secondhand record shop, and he just does ridiculous things all the time.
Yeah.
It's so annoying because he's got them out of jail so many times. So look, when you think about our squad, you can think about Martin Odegaard. Can he get there? I think he can.
Yeah.
Can Declan Rice get to that level? I think he can. Can Bukayo Saka get to that level? Yes, I think he can. So we have players in the squad who can get there. I just don't know if they're quite there yet, And I think this is where those two have the advantage over Arsenal, which isn't to say I think it's insurmountable or I don't think we can go the distance, but it is going to take maybe one or two players having a second half of the season where you go, oh my God, where did that come from? Where did that run of form come from? Because one guy or two guys going on a run of form can win you games in the Premier League, game after game after game, where you think, how are we going to score? Where is it going to come from? And bang, Saka bangs one top corner in the 80th minute, and you're like, oh my God, we've done it. Or Martinelli scores a load of goals away. Freddie Ljungberg scored a load of goals on the way to the title, in 2002, I think it was. Or So I think that's what we need from these players. But they're very strong, and they're teams who should be challenging for the title, and they're teams who are going to take a lot of beating. I suppose the one thing you might say is that perhaps the fact that it is so competitive this season, maybe there's a little more, I don't mean margin for error. I don't think there is much margin for error, but maybe there's more chance this year of a team, in the sort of top 8 taking something off those two teams in comparison to previous years, which, also applies to us, but we can only master what we can master. So.
Yeah, and that Liverpool Man City game, when it eventually does arrive, we'd love a draw, I suppose, really. Either a draw or a Liverpool win, I think, because I see Liverpool more likely as a side to drop points than the mechanical, monotonous beast that Man City can be, where they just churn out result after result after result. And everyone's so familiar with the run they went on last season when they dropped points at Forest and then didn't drop any more until they won the league. It's ridiculous. Like, we talk about our best start to a season last season. They probably had the best end to a season, to the point of a team winning the league than any team ever has from that point, at least, surely. So it is such a challenge that we've got to face, but hopefully we've got the minerals. We'll have to wait and see. We're going to bring the show in the second half of this to in Askcast style, with some questions from the chat box as well. So get them in there, guys, and we'll go for as many as we can. The brilliantly named Rancid Pumpkin says, how do you feel about the upcoming Champions League games against Porto? Is there any PTSD from our Champions League past, or are you confident?
A little from column A, a little from column B. I think this was always going to be one of the challenges of this season, was maintaining a title push and dealing with top level midweek football. The extra effort it requires and the fatigue that it can bring is something we're going to have to manage domestically. This is where I think, one of the things that was really impressive about our win over West Ham was that we didn't have Zinchenko, Tomiyasu, Timber, Partey, Smith Rowe, Vieira. Did I mention him already? I can't remember.
I think so.
And Jesus. So you're like seven first team players out, and we still won 6-0, which is great.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we're going to be able to maintain that level of performance unless we can manage the load on certain players a bit better, that there are changes and rotations that he is going to have to make at the weekend after a Champions League game or after a weekend game going into a Champions League game. He's going to have to freshen things up. And even those maybe 2 or 3 changes just to give you a few extra percentage points of physical energy on the pitch can be the difference between winning and losing. I'm relatively confident, I have to say. I don't underestimate Porto in any way. I also think we have something to prove as well in Europe. Under Mikel Arteta a little bit. It's been patchy, it's fair to say. So I'm slightly more on the confidence side. I'm just looking forward to it. Those big European nights, those big occasions in midweek. It doesn't feel like we've had too many of those over the last number of years, and maybe we got a bit used to them in the past. But I'm looking forward to giving Porto a good go and then see where we end up and who we get next. There's the big question. Not jumping ahead, but yeah. I mean, are you confident on this one?
Yeah, I like you. It's like apprehensive confidence is what it is, because Porto are a very good side, but they're without a doubt a team that we should be rightfully expected to progress past. When we got them in the next round, I was delighted, to be honest, with that draw. I was pleased with that draw. I know it's tempting fate, and I'm frantically touching wood while saying that. But that is a draw in the last 16 of the Champions League that you look at and go, yeah, okay, who can we get in the quarterfinals? That's the way you look at it when it comes up. So, and then it starts to get very interesting because, of course, Liverpool aren't in the Champions League this season. Bayern Munich have been beaten by another team that aren't in the Champions League but look very good in Bayer Leverkusen as well. And then you look at the main threats being Man City and Real Madrid. Barcelona, of course, are there as well, but they've got an interesting tie against Napoli that will knock one out. Inter Milan having a very good season as well in Serie A. So there's some massive teams in there. But I look at the Champions League as a real opportunity. I look at it, I don't know if you agree, I look at it as a more assailable target than the Premier League title this season, personally.
I know what you mean, because sometimes you can get a run in a cup competition. You can get the look of the draw. Man City could be knocked out. Bayern Munich could be knocked out. Who knows what can happen in cup football? And all of a sudden you find yourself in the semifinals and, you could be there. I mean, I think it is potentially, I'm not going to say more achievable, but there is perhaps a more obvious pathway. Then again, we could, beat Porto, get Real Madrid in the next round, and then be set up to play Man City in the next round after that. And you might have to do it the hard way. That is the reality of this competition. But yeah, you can get a favorable draw and find yourself going deep. I'm not going to say without any trouble, but certainly with an easier pathway than it might have been.
Do they still do the preemptive draws where they do the quarters and the semis together?
I don't know, actually. I don't know.
I think they have done before. So it would be interesting if we do make it through to
Someone in the comments is bound to know, yeah.
Someone will know. Someone will tell us, I'm sure. So do let us know. Moving forwards, John says we have Man City away, Brighton away, Villa at home, Wolves away, Tottenham away, and Man United away still. How many points do you think we'll get from those 6 games?
I think if you came out of those with, 6, so it's 6 games, 18 points. And you could lose 1 and win 5, or you could draw 4 of them and you could go through them unbeaten and come off with less points. I'm going to say Man City away.
Maybe a better question, how much do we need to get, really?
I think we need minimum 15.
Yeah.
And that includes 3 against Man City.
And dropping them somewhere else.
Yeah. But like, right, if I had the crystal ball to tell you how many points we get from those, I would be, I'd be putting my wages on down the bookies and then retiring in the summer from my winnings. It is a tricky run, but you can't escape the fact that if you want to win a title, you're going to have to go to these games and perform and take points and win most of them in order to win the title. So There's maybe margin for error in one game. So
if that, yeah, madness. What the Premier League title race is like at the moment.
Mhm.
Again, similar to kind of looking ahead, Ditcher says, out of the 14 Premier League games that remain, how many do you think Trossard will start in? Which kind of is a question about, I guess, more so, do we now see him as a starting figure in the team?
I will say 7.
Mm,
I think it is dependent on Gabriel Jesus. It's quite interesting, isn't it, that when Jesus is out now, Mikel Arteta goes a different direction, whereas at the start of the season and maybe the first part of the season, he would have gone with Eddie and Nketiah,
mm.
and he hasn't in the last few games. And I think he realizes that maybe in both Trossard and Havertz, he's got 2 options who potentially give you a bit more than Eddie does. And I'm not here to sort of criticize Eddie or talk him down or anything like that. But if there was a big game tomorrow, if we're going away to Manchester City and Gabriel Jesus isn't fit, would you prefer to see Eddie or would you prefer to see Trossard starting up front? And I think I prefer to see Trossard. Eddie has his own qualities, his own skills. I just think Trossard is just a bit more capable of giving you something out of nothing. Not out of nothing, but you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
If there's
Yeah.
if there's sort of a half chance or a quarter chance, I would be more confident that Trossard is the guy to stick it in the top corner than Eddie,
Yeah, I think Trossard's range is better, like, in terms of
Yeah,
where he
for
can
sure.
influence the game. Like, Nketiah is very much with respect, as close to the 6-yard box, I'll rely on Eddie to do his job. And I know he's done some really good things. I remember his goal at Chelsea. I remember the spin at home, is it against Southampton, maybe? One of the teams last season where he spun and smashed it bottom left-hand corner. He can do that, but the majority of the time, his best work comes in a small space close to the goal, whereas Trossard has such influence. I mean, the ball over the top, obviously, that led to the penalty against West Ham. He can do those types of things despite playing at centre forward. He's just so malleable, I think, and that's what makes him so valuable. One from Jason here. At what point of the season should they announce Arteta's new contract? Should they wait for the
in
end
the
of the
summer?
season?
I think they should wait for the summer. I think, I don't think it'll be a distraction in any way. I just think what would happen if they did it, let's say in March or something like that, is that you get a load of people go, "Oh, you haven't won anything, and we should wait." And then if we don't win the title, they say we're a typical loser club, blah blah. And who's got the energy for that, really?
Yeah.
Maybe the club actually don't give a shit about that kind of thing, and they'll just do it, when they feel comfortable doing it. And if that's the case, then I'm perfectly on board with that. I just probably think that, when you're heading into the business end of the season, rightly or wrongly, and I think probably wrongly, it will be viewed as something that is a distraction, I don't want to hear Gary Neville sitting on Sky Sports talking about how if we don't win the title, and he'll go, I think I'm back now to the end of March and they announced Arteta's new contract. And did he get, comfortable or complacent because blah, blah, blah. A bit like how he went on about Zinchenko blowing his horn outside the Tollington, as if that had anything whatsoever to do with Arsenal not winning the title last season. It's just so stupid and reductive that I would like to deny him any opportunity to come out with, he's perfectly capable of inventing his own bollocks to come out with, pardon my language, but we shouldn't give him any ammunition if you understand. So I think probably the right thing to do is end of the season. Just from the housekeeping point of view, it makes sense to me.
Every time I see Gary Neville in the press lounge, it takes all my resistance to not go up to him and be like, why? Just why? Why are you saying these things? It makes no sense at all. The Zinchenko thing was so disassociated from the conversation that was even being had at that point in the discussion, and to just bring it back up again, it was just odd. Like, to be fair, I'm partly guilty. At the weekend, like, I spoke to Bukayo Saka. I say spoke, it's a loose term, in the mix zone.
Sure,
He
yeah,
had a minute with us, and you can actually watch the interview on NBC's YouTube channel because that's where it got posted. But we literally got like 4 questions in. And so I thought, well, I'm only going to get one quick one, so I'll try and be a little bit quippy. And so I said to him, do you think 6 goals is enough to justify celebrating? And he first was a bit like, and then he got it and started laughing. But the question was moved on elsewhere, because I think Arsenal are very much like, yeah, that's kind of, we're done with that talk now.
Yeah. We've had enough of this. Like, you either celebrate too much or don't celebrate enough.
Yeah.
Which is it, guys? Yeah. So I don't know. What do you think about the contract thing?
Well, I was looking actually when they announced the last time, and they announced it at the end of April in 2022, which was obviously during the Champions League chase with Spurs. And ultimately that, I don't know if it's right to say it backfired, announced it. With the benefit of hindsight, you say it backfired because we didn't qualify for the Champions League during that season. But I couldn't sit here and say that the reason why we didn't was because Arteta signed a new contract, or that had any bearing on. But obviously, it created, as you say, a discussion topic. It created the question mark, and But I suppose you're doomed if you do, doomed if you don't. Because you might say, well, if you're going to sign him up to a new contract, why not do it before and give Arsenal that momentum? Going into the end of the season, and we didn't do that. We didn't take that chance. So there's an argument both ways, I guess.
Yeah, you might say, like, a parallel with the Klopp thing, in that, like, why not? If it's going to be done, announce it now, and everybody's on board, and they know that he's here to stay, and whether that sort of keeps the fire lit under their backsides or not, you could make that argument. In reality, I don't think it makes that much difference when they announce it.
Couple more. Interesting one here from JC, who says, what impact will Richard Garlick have now as CEO? I refuse to believe that it won't have any, but what does Andrew think of the change at that leadership level?
I mean, I really don't know, to be honest. It's so difficult to quantify or make the connection between what happens at executive level and what happens on the pitch, beyond the fact we can all see when a club is being run well and when a club is not being run well. I think, when Arsene left and when Ivan Gazidis left, the club was not in a good place. And I don't think good decisions were made with good process. And we ended up, with something that really didn't work. Now, Arsenal feels well run, that the people at the top of the club are paying more attention. They know what they're doing. They understand the stakes are higher. I think Richard Garlick is a very smart guy. I think he'll step into that role very well, has lots and lots of football experience. I would say, from our perspective as fans, we won't really notice anything that happens. It'll be pretty seamless. It happens at executive level. The buck stops with the owners when it comes to spending and that kind of stuff. So I think it is a good appointment, I have to say. I think it makes sense. And we'll just have to wait and see, are there any other changes at executive level? Because obviously Vinay is leaving. Richard Garlick is head of football operations right now, I think. So will there be another football appointment behind the scenes somewhere? But I think that group of Richard Garlick, Tim Lewis, Mikel Arteta, Per Mertesacker, Josh Kroenke, Juliet Slot, these people who are going to be running the club from a footballing and business perspective.
Yeah,
they seem pretty simpatico at this moment in time. So I think, from our point of view as fans, we won't notice anything.
Yeah, probably not. To be fair, but we're seeing, obviously, we've seen the Sober Realty deal with the London Colony. I think Juliet Slot was probably the key person behind that on the commercial side of things. But Richard, obviously known from his work with the Premier League, and he's come in and worked with Edu. And you look at the recruitment, yes, it's not been perfect, and very few clubs get everything perfect. But that business, the squad building, that we've had with Edu and Richard working together with a larger group of lesser known people involved as well.
But also the retention aspect of it that people don't talk about a great deal is that we have signed Saka, Martinelli, Odegaard, William Saliba. You know, there was a bit of doubt as to whether or not he was going to sign a new deal. Gabriel signed a new deal. Ben White is about to sign a new deal. Tomiyasu will sign a new deal. You know, so the retention of our best players is part of what Richard Garlick has been involved in a big way. So, you know, that's another way of judging what it is that he does and how he does it.
Yeah, I mean, just signing William Saliba up to Nuno deserves a promotion. So that was always going to be a challenge.
For sure.
Last one from Albrecht, who says, are we seeing the evolution many were asking for when Nwaneri and other young players are getting more minutes nowadays? I mean, when you say other players, I think it's just Nwaneri recently that's got that chance. But that cameo from him, I know Arteta was joking in the post-match presser where he said some of the players are whispering about giving him a chance. I think he would have done anyway. But that was an important moment, I thought, to see him come onto the field. So what did you make of that step?
Yeah, look, I mean, the opportunity was there to give him minutes. The game was won. And, you know, if we do get, you know, the players I mentioned earlier being out, if we get most of those players back, Ethan Nwaneri is not going to be on the bench much between now and the end of the season. So I think the opportunities and the chances to give him those moments, to integrate him into the team, to get him properly involved with the first team, because, you know, there's a lot goes on a match day. They travel together, they room together, you know, stay over in the hotel and, you know, just sort of giving him the grounding for when he is really, really ready to make a step up and challenge for a first team place. I think it's great to see it. You know, he's clearly very, very talented. I think sometimes we do over egg the pudding a little bit when it comes to our young players, and people don't really understand or appreciate how difficult it is to make the step up from youth team football to first team in the Premier League, whether you're a title chasing team or not, but more especially when you are a title chasing team, when the stakes are so high, when the performance levels and the consistency have to be like there week after week after week after week. You know, the reality of young players is inconsistency. That is just part and parcel of their growth and development. So, you know, I think there's a bigger, longer discussion for another day, maybe, about Arteta and young players. And I know it's one that people have talked about a great deal, but, you know, you can be the most highly rated young talent at London Colney, at Hale End, and 2 years later, you're playing for a team in the Spanish third division, like Miguel Aziz. You know, the pathway is not linear. Just because you're the best till you're 15 or 16 or 17 does not mean that when you get to 18 you're going to be the best. You know, things start to equalize, and for myriad reasons you might not fulfill your potential as a footballer, you know. So I do get a little bit frustrated with some of that discussion, because, you know, think about how good you have to be to get into this Arsenal team right now. So it was pleasing that when there was a chance to give Nwaneri minutes, and, you know, 15, 20 minutes at the end of a game, I think is what he got. Looked very good, very tidy. It's going to be great for him. But, you know, realistically, when are we going to see him again if everyone's fit? EFL Cup next year, maybe, you know?
Maybe.
So, you know, that's what they're trying to instill in him as well, you know, is like, be a bit patient. He's only 16. He's 16. For God's sake. You know, think about
He's not
what
even signed a pro contract yet, which is
yeah, he can't do that till he turns 17. I think is he 17 next month? Yeah.
March, yeah.
So, you know, patience is not a thing that football fans have a lot of, and I include myself in that. You know, I'm not saying it's just everyone else, but I think in his case, we are going to need to be patient, and you know, sometimes a player comes out of your academy that you don't necessarily expect as well. So it could be a little bit of a wild card in our ranks somewhere that we don't quite talk about as much now, but maybe in 2 years' time we're going, holy moly, look at this guy. So we'll see.
I think we'll see Nwaneri on the weekend when we're 6-0 up again against Burnley.
Yeah.
that's
I
all.
think we'll see him at Man City when we're 6-0 up against Man City in the 70th minute at the Etihad. We'll bring him on. He'll score a couple. We'll get that 8. You know.
Happy days. Happy days. Andrew, it's always an absolute pleasure to sit down and chat with you, as always. Please do tell people where they can find you and what you're going to be up to.
They can find me at arseblog.com. Everything is on there. And what are we going to be up to? All the usual stuff, podcasts and Patreon and, all of it. So, yeah, that's what we'll be doing. And hopefully celebrating a lot of wins in the away kit between now and the end of the season. So, and if we do, I'll buy one myself, I have to say.
Yeah, I've said the same. I have made that same promise. I said, if we win the league, I will be getting a away shirt with Havertz on the back and sing the Waka Waka song. That is my promise.
Okay. Everyone can hold you to that. I'm here. I'm witness to it. So this will be like, when footballers join a new club and they have to, go on stage or stand up in front of everyone and sing the song. So I'm looking forward to hearing you sing, Tom, I have to say.
Yeah. I've got our live event next week, and I'm very worried that the majority of our audience will be wearing this shirt because they know my aversion to it. So be blinded up on the stage with the.
There are worse things. There are worse things in the world.
Absolutely. Thank you, listeners. I hope you've enjoyed yourselves. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Please drop a like and subscribe and all that usual YouTube-y stuff. I'll be back tomorrow morning, of course, at 8 a.m. And let me just quickly once again plug yesterday evening's show where I was joined by Laura and Sophie for a good chat about women in the sport at the moment, and especially the kind of the trials and the tests that women go through in the world of football, and especially what was going on with social media yesterday. It was a really poignant topic of discussion. So certainly a really good listen and worth your time. So go back and listen to that one again, please, if you haven't done so already. Other than that, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you and to speak with Andrew, of course. And I will see you again on the next one. Have a fantastic day. Stay safe, stay well. And as always, up the Arsenal.